Well, hello everybody. This is Constance from Mysterious Galaxy. I just want to say thank you. Sorry about kicking it off with a technical difficulty, but the internet is the internet. Um, Thank you so much for joining us today, though. I am super excited because we are here today to celebrate Christopher Reich's new book, The Palace. Christopher is a New York Times bestselling author. He's got a lot of great titles under his belt that you are probably familiar with, like The Take, Number to Count, Rules of Deception, the list goes on. And this is the third book in the Simon Riske series. I am going to go ahead and, Christopher, I'll let you go ahead and tell all of our readers a little bit about the new book and everything and just kind of the inspiration for it. And also, everybody, make sure that while we are talking, if you have questions, that you put them down. There's this beautiful button that says Ask a Question. Make sure you put all of your questions down there. And I highly encourage you to ask whatever questions you have, because the more questions we have, then the more things we can talk about. And also, too, if you want to buy Chris's book and get it personalized and signed, I've got a purchase signed book button for you as well. So, Christopher, I will let you go ahead and take it away. Tell us about the new book, the inspiration. Yay, book number 3!
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Book number 3. It's fun to be here. This is my first virtual event, so I will try not to look at myself in the right hand or left hand side of the screen. But indeed, we have to all adjust to this new world, and I guess this is part of it, and part of something we will probably be doing for like a long time. So first off, I know I have some friends out there. I want to give a shout out to Phil Thoden out in Austin, fellow UT grad. And I think I can hear him. Bill? And I know Patrick Larson from Facebook, who is the tour manager for Trans-Siberian Orchestra, one of my favorite groups. And, talk about an industry that's hard hit. It's that music industry. My goodness, when will we be able to go back out and see live performances? I mean, I hope sooner rather than later. Anyhow, let's talk about the book and work. This is the third book in the Simon Riske series. Called The Palace. It's interesting to really, when you start building out a series, how it is so different from writing just standalone books. When you're doing a series, it's not just about the story. You're always having to bring in stuff from the back to explain what happened in the past. So every reader that could come to this book, if they have not read one beforehand, could just pick it up and start from there. So when I first started writing this series, I really wanted to, with the character of Simon Riske, I had written a lot of these, what the New York Times called like globe-trotting, bomb-ticking, loyalty-blurring thrillers. They were just so serious from, page 1 to the very end. And frankly, with what was going on in the news, kind of the world had surpassed me. It's like the world was crazier even than what a crazy thriller writer could think up. So, I said, I want to write the kind of books that I love reading, and that I felt that there was a big hole in the market for kind of exciting books with a flawed hero, but that weren't so incredibly ultra serious, where the hero had a good sense of humor. So I tried to bring that in a little bit more glamorous, more cosmopolitan. So that was the whole kind of beginning, the genesis of the Simon Riske series. Was basically just to get away from what I've been doing in the past and have some more fun writing. I needed to sit down and say, I want to have fun writing and get a few smiles, even when, in the most dire of circumstances, be able to have a smile. And, the first book, The Take, which introduces Simon Riske, is set primarily in Europe, in Paris and Monaco. Riske has an interesting childhood, interesting kind of background, American by birth. Interestingly, when you're a writer and you start proposing new ideas for characters, if you're writing in America, one of the first things your editor will tell you is, your character is an American. He's American. Doesn't have to wear a red hat, but he's definitely an American. And even Lee Child, who's a close friend, and who's English to the core, Jack Reacher is American to the core. And I think we're trying to go after this bigger market. So Simon Riske is an American. However, he lives in London, above his auto body repair shop, where he fixes the finest in Ferraris. It's so funny, when I started to write this, you always write from what you know. where do you get your ideas from? And in my office in Encinitas, there was a very nice Swiss lady that had a nice boutique selling clothes. I'm Swiss. Okay, I'm half Swiss. And we would speak French or German together. And she goes, "Oh, Chris, I'm so happy to see you." I said, "Maggie, you have a really nice store, but I don't really see that many people ever coming in and out of it." She goes, "Oh, it doesn't matter. My husband restores Ferraris." I go, "Is that a good business?" She goes, "Well, we just bought a Gulfstream 3 jet." So I said, "I want to know more about restoring Ferraris. Tell me about it." And I started learning about this whole business of these kind of exotic automobiles, primarily Ferraris, Lamborghinis, some Maseratis, but really it's mostly Ferraris. Then you get the Aston Martins, the Bugattis, but how the value of these vehicles has absolutely skyrocketed in the last 30 years. I said I should have taken every cent I got from every advance of my books and started buying Ferraris because they have just skyrocketed. And I'm writing a book now, Simon Riske 4, which opens up with Simon Riske has to go track down a missing gearbox. That's part where your stick shift is for the most expensive Ferrari ever made. Ends up that car is being purchased by the biggest organized criminal in Russia, and complications ensue. However, the point is that I started learning more. It's like this car is literally just sold for $75 million. Wow. That kind of blows my mind that one car could cost that much and that there's multiple people wanting to buy it. So I thought that would be a great business for someone to be in. And I visited this friend of mine, Gary Bobolek, his name is, Top Gun Motors is his company in San Diego. And he showed me around his shop and how they fix up these cars. It takes 2 to 3 years a piece, usually between 1 to 5 million to fix them up. But you buy this car for $1 million, you pay $5 million, and you sell it for $20 million. Now, that sounds like good math to me, right? So I thought, God, it's such an interesting business. So I thought that would be a great kind of milieu to set my story with my hero, Simon Riske. But of course, he's a complicated character. His father committed suicide. He was sent to live with his mother in Marseille, France. And here's another thing. So I started researching. It's like, where do I want to put my character? I said, Marseille, that's interesting. Let me look into Marseille. And I put in, I think, in YouTube, Marseille organized crime. And it came up with a story on the French version of 60 Minutes of saying that the organized crime groups in Marseille completely own the streets. And it followed with a clip, and you guys could look this up, clip of these organized criminals, the mafia down there, they call it Le Milieu, in fact, surrounding and stopping an armored car and just blasting the hell out of it, like 10 guys with AK-47s on like Sunset Boulevard of Marseille. I go, this is for real? I said, I'm going to put that in my book because I hadn't seen that. So I mixed this where Riske is this great mixture of, it came from a good family, fell in hard times, then really dived into the criminal life, became a full-on, made man, has the tattoos, the scars, everything, served time in prison, and got out had kind of a transformational experience with someone he'd been in prison. He was in solitary confinement and decided to turn his life back to the good. So one of the really fun questions about Riske is he really good or is he really bad? Which one is he?
Yeah. And
it's fun because in the first three, you always know he turns toward the light, he's good. In this book, all bets are off. The new book, the one I'm writing now, is called Once a Thief, which means once a thief, always a thief, right? And he's going right back to how bad he was. Or is he? But anyway, it's fun. And so, as I was saying, these books are cosmopolitan and they take place all over the world. And I finished the first two and I said, I felt like getting out of the States. So I said, I'm going to write this new one in the Far East. And so I went and lived last year from January through April in Bangkok. And my father is Swiss. He was in the travel business. And, the hotel business is basically controlled by the Swiss mafia. I mean, the Swiss they run all the good hotels. And one of my brother's best friends runs this hotel in Bangkok, the JW Marriott. So he goes, Chris, you must come stay with me, please. And so I said, well, my kids are both in college. This is what I dreamed of my whole life. the point of being an author is I don't have to have a 9 to 5. It's like, I'm not going to my office in Century City or, on Fifth Avenue. Phil, I don't know where you work, but in Austin, I don't have to go there. And so, I jumped on the plane, and it was great. I mean, Bangkok is a hell of a city. A little too many people. It's 14 million people, a lot of pollution. For about 6 days I was there, they had the world's third worst pollution. And they have a lovely executive lounge at the top of the hotel, but you go sit there, they have like this, you could go get a drink at 5:30 or 6, sit outside, and when it was that thick, the cloud, they refused to call it smog. The king of Thailand said you could not call it smog, you have to call it haze. So the quote unquote haze was so thick, you could not see like the skyscraper like 100 feet away from you. It was so scary. And you could feel it in your lungs. You could feel like right away. It was bad. But anyhow, so I started writing, Simon, this book, The Palace. And when you read it, you'll see that the first really more than almost 3/4 take place in the Far East, in Bangkok, in Malaysia, and in Singapore. And it's funny, Bangkok's a very modern city, but it's poorly planned and there's terrible traffic. People are lovely, but you really wouldn't want to be there so much. On the contrary, Singapore is like the most beautiful, incredible city I've ever been in. It literally sits at the tip of the equator. It's the tip of the Malay Peninsula, exactly on the equator, which means the weather never changes. It's 90 degrees in either cloudy or sunny the whole year, but it's always 90 degrees. Okay, there's a rainy season, there's a dry season, but it's hot. But my point about Singapore is, if you want to see where America would be if we just didn't spend $10 trillion on wars, you look at Singapore with the most magnificent architecture, the most magnificent infrastructure, a population that is so charged up to work hard and build their country. I just walked there going, my God, this is kind of like America in 1940 or 1935. We were just so on the charge, growing. Did you know they built the Empire State Building in 11 months?
I did not.
For me, that's one of the most insane facts ever. They built the Empire State Building in 11 months. They were putting up, when they started going, a floor every week. Boom, boom, boom. And then I think almost every day then at the end. But Singapore is that kind of place. So I was just so impressed by Singapore. I have to give the shout out to Singapore. And I remember about 20 years ago, there was this report on like 2020, the ABC News show, where a young man, an American in Singapore, had been arrested for spitting his bubble gum out onto the street. Yep. And that is a no-no in Singapore. And they caught him, they arrested him, and they were going to cane him 20 times. And this became a cause célèbre and a big furor, But when you go to Singapore and see how beautiful it is and how the people respect it, it's like, I'm going to be the first guy to give the guy the 20 lashes because he has no respect. A beautiful country, beautiful people. They're working so hard. So this new book, The Palace, takes place in the Far East and then transitions to the end into Europe, Zurich, and into Cannes. It ends in Cannes at the film festival, which is actually where the book coincidentally starts. It's so fun when you write these books. I say there's two phases to writing a thriller. Phase 1 and phase 2. So you start with these thrillers that are like these big crazy stories, kind of. It's like, where am I going to start? What, the inciting incident they call it. How do you start these books? What makes it, how do you start it up? And so I had that idea. I said, okay, I got the idea. Simon Riske, one of his old friends who he owes a favor to this guy. He has to go save him. This guy gets arrested, put in prison in Bangkok, and we all know about, Thai prisons. I saw recently that the film director Alan Parker died, who did the great movie Midnight Express, which was the scare, like everybody our age was like, I'm not going to Turkey because I don't want to end up in a Turkish prison. And so, so I said, okay, it's going to start there in Bangkok. He has to get his friend out. And then where do you go to? I kept on, so I got to page 250. It's like, how am I going to end this book? What's going to happen? And you work on kind of serendipity and luck. And one of my friends at that time happened to be in Paris and visiting the Louvre Museum, the Louvre, and he was posting pictures of his favorite paintings. And I really can't say too much more because I don't want to give it away, but I saw one of the paintings and said, I remember I also lived in Paris for a summer, and I love art, and probably not the best art. I always like the big romantic era tableau, the Delacroix, the big thing, Napoleon crossing the Alps, stuff like that. That's what I like, kind of like the books I write. And one of the paintings he posted was similar to this. I said, oh, and I looked at it and something clicked. I said, oh my God, that's the ending of my book. And it just shows you have to keep your mind open. So I'm very proud of myself, like in a kind of bragging. It's like, yay, it's like my art history class at Georgetown paid off because now 30 years later, I can use something. So, these books are fun to write. They're taxing, but especially with these Simon Riske books, I want people to just read them and have fun where you're just turning the pages, smiling, but you can't wait to see what happens at the end. And I get a good response. So, that's where I am right now. Happy to take some questions. Certainly happy to talk some more about my career, how I write my books, but let's go from there.
So one of the questions I have, it touches on how you mentioned that he had a lot of change of heart when the character was in prison, and in personal, like in isolation in general. Did you have to do any specific kind of research for how like being in isolation like that psychologically affects characters, or is he still struggling with PTSD from that in this book, or how did his character kind of?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think anyone ever stops struggling from PTSD, but my research was kind of done for me because
Mhm.
I cribbed a little bit of the story from one of my all-time favorite authors, Alexandre Dumas, and The Count of Monte Cristo. And it's pretty obvious, and I'm not trying to hide it, where he's in prison and he meets up with a similar character that the Count of Monte Cristo, Edmond
Gotcha.
Dantes, met up with
Mhm.
at the Chateau d'If, which is just off the coast of Marseille. Uh, and so I kind of used that storyline to say, how did this guy change?
Got it.
But he definitely still suffers from PTSD in a big way, because if you read the take, he's put in an underground solitary confinement, like 10 by 6 cell for a long period of time.
Mhm.
And of course, I mean, that would screw up anybody's mind.
Yeah. And to switch to kind of like more of a fun question. So you've gotten to travel so much to do research for all of these books, but for this one, what is the funniest story you have from Bangkok and from Singapore from
That's good question.
traveling?
Oh my God. Well, the best thing I got to do in Bangkok was I went to this elephant rescue center,
Oh,
and
yes, I've had
it was
friends go
about,
there.
oh my God, it was transformative. It's like, and I have two beautiful daughters, and they're both vegan, and they're both very. My younger daughter Katya really wants to save the world. She's gonna, very environmentally conscious, as am I think. Though if I can't afford a private jet, I will take it. Sorry, carbon footprint. But anyhow, so we went out to this elephant sanctuary, and gosh, it was like eye opening. And you spend this time, the whole day with these elephants, and they're really, elephants are very like kind of cognizant, and they say elephants remember everything. I really think they do, but it was just neat to be with them. So I don't know if that qualifies as funny, but it was just great to be close, and you clean them up and you feed them, and you're just next to these gigantic beasts. It was emotional. It was very nice. The only other funny thing was at one point when I was in this hotel, I literally did not leave. I did not walk outside the hotel from working for 2 weeks,
Oh,
when
wow.
because it's a beautiful hotel. It's like they got the gym, they got the pool, they got the executive place lounge where I said, this is my personal office. I went there every day. It's like, it was this very strange cocoon. I think I might have been channeling what was going to happen this year, because I was so alone. But I did enjoy it. And I have nothing but positive things to say about Bangkok, and especially the Thai people are just the nicest. So Singapore, I was just in Singapore for 7 days. In between that, I went because I thought I was going to write part of my book on a deserted island where my character gets marooned kind of. So I found this completely island off the coast of Malaysia. And I booked it that like an Airbnb there. It's like only 7 beds on this island. I said, I want to check this place out. And so you fly to the island of Langkawi, which is a tropical island. Okay, it's about an hour south of Bangkok. Then you get in one of these kind of Malaysian longboats, which is a very thin boat cover, and the guy's in the back with a big, motor. And you go across the channel, and then all of a sudden there's an island, and there's like 7 bungalows. So I was in this bungalow for like 9 days. I go, oh, that's great. Look at this bungalow. I'm going to do so much work. And the guy that greets me is a very nice Malaysian gentleman, about 70, long hair, way down his back. He goes, oh, Mr. Reich, thank you. He goes, oh, by the way, we have no air conditioning. It's like 90 every day. So it's like, you want to try to write? It's like I'm literally sweating onto my pages. It's like, this is really gross. But the fun thing about there is, go ahead.
I was about to say, that makes me want to ask then, are you a writer who believes in writing the first draft all on paper instead of typing it?
I'm doomed. I write everything longhand and then transcribe by typing afterwards. And I'll tell you, Constance, and everyone else, I can write a really great chapter in like 2 hours, and it takes me 4.5 or 5 to type that thing in. I cannot even read my writing. It's like, who wrote that? Anyhow, so it was fun, and I would write longhand and sweat onto the pages. And the funny thing about this island is the caretaker loved monkeys, so he had all these monkeys from the jungle, because it was a jungle back there. And they would rescue these, I guess monkeys sometimes abandon some of the weaker children. And they would rescue the weaker monkeys and bring them in and take care of them. And I'll tell you one thing. I never want a monkey for a pet. These are the most precocious. No, they are they're like just this close to being human in all the bad aspects of being a human.
Yeah.
They run all over you, jump this way, that way, think they're friendly, grab your food. Oh, you're so cute. And then oh my God. I think a couple of them grabbed my pages and ran away. I'm running down the beach. Stop. Anyhow. Yeah. No monkeys.
My dad had the same thing where he was, I forget, were they in Tunisia, but it was the same thing. They had like beautiful pools, staying in a beautiful area. But did they get to use the pool? Only when the monkeys decided that they didn't think it was their pool.
Oh my goodness. That's funny.
So it's so funny, but so true. So we've got 2 questions that have come in, and I'm going to go ahead and ask you them. This is from Miles from Facebook, and he says, big fan, curious, do you have plans for any more Ransom/Rules novels?
Yeah. Well, I've had a great last 6 months on the filmed entertainment front, and I can tell you that I will be writing more Ransom books because there's going to be 4 Ransom Netflix movies coming up. I can't yet say who's starring in it, but it's a big star. He has blonde hair. He has a lot of muscles. And so that's great news. And so, yes, I'm very happy. So there will be more Ransom books. And the whole story with the Ransom story is kind of one of those kind of dirty publishing stories you don't really want to tell. I love Jonathan Ransom. Those books did great for me. They were very successful. And then suddenly people said, maybe you should change. But Ransom is coming back, Miles, and in a big way. So Thank you.
Well, I think lots of people will be happy. And also congratulations, because that is awesome. And I'm excited to see who this blonde, muscular person is who shall be playing. And then the next question we've got, this is from Todd. And he says, amazing books and characters. Wait, that's the same. Wait a second. This is why you should always read questions before you ask them. It was the exact same question. Revisit the rules of series. Revisit the rules of series. Any ideas to revisit the rules of series? Which you just answered that question.
Yeah, I do. It's funny. I'll just go on. I love that. That series was so great for me. what's interesting about that series for me personally is that it came off from the worst part of my life and became the best part of my life. So I started my career, and I used to be an investment banker. I worked in Switzerland. I worked for the Union Bank of Switzerland. Then I ran a watch company before I became a writer. And then, I wrote my first book, Numbered Account, which was thankfully a big hit. But then I wrote some other books that were not that big of hits. Okay, they just weren't. And it's not like you try to write a worse book. Believe me, every writer busts their butt for every book. We're not trying to like give you short shrift. We're trying to do our best. But they weren't doing well. And so I'd written these first 5 books or 4 books, I forget. And I thought I was like a Mr. Big Shot, Christopher Reich, best-selling author. And I go, well, Richard, my publisher, Delacorte, said, we're not continuing with Mr. Reich. He spilled enough red ink on our books. That was a quote. Spilled enough red ink. You know what that means? I was a banker. I know what red ink is. It's not good. So I said, oh, Richard, no. Go at my agent, Richard Pine, the best agent in the galaxy and the best human being. Really, he said, Chris, don't worry. Let me make some calls. We're going to get something set up real quick. Just hold your horses for a little bit. I said, no problem. I'm living in a very nice house. I have 2 kids, private school. So, it's like the American dream, right? An American lug right on your shoulder. And after about 2 weeks, Richard's not calling him back. I said, well, what's going on? He goes, Chris, I've reached to these people. I got to tell you, he goes, no one wants to touch you with a 10-foot pole. I said, what does that mean? He goes, it means you're on your own, buddy. He goes, I'm with you, but you have to go back and write the best book you've ever written as quickly as you can, or as quickly as you want to, but the best book. Click. It's like that was a click, heard around the world. I said, whoa. I always equate being a writer is like being a submariner. You spend 9 months of the year in your submarine under the water. 3 months you come and say, here's my book. Let's edit it. Let's publish it. Otherwise it's like, go underwater and shut up. We don't want to hear from you. So all of a sudden it's like, I got to write this freaking book. So what do? It's like, okay, write the book that you always love to read. What did I grow up reading? Robert Ludlum, Born Identity. Ken Follett, Eye of the Needle. I'm going to write that. And so I wrote this book, Rules of Deception. Rules of Deception. I didn't even have a title till the very end, but I wrote this story. It's like, this is going to be the ultimate book. And I remember after I wrote it, took me 18 months, and I sent it to Richard. And here's a rule in publishing. The better the book, the faster people get back to you. If your book's good, they want to tell you how much they like it. Warp speed, Operation Warp Speed. Sorry. They want to tell you right away. Dr. Fauci wants to tell me right away how good this book is. Anyhow, so I sent this book on a Friday, and Richard Pine calls me. First of all, he's in New York, 3 hours ahead. I'm in Encinitas, California. Saturday morning, like at 10, he goes, I stayed up all night reading that book. He goes, Chris, I think you did it. I said, holy shit. Anyway, so 3 weeks later, we find ourselves in New York City visiting 8 publishers that say, Chris, that want to profess an interest to buying this book. And do you know what? The first thing that every one of them said, everyone, Chris, we've wanted to work with you for so long.
What?
Right? It was so funny. And Richard we walked out just high-fiving, go, man, we did it. Because he's such a part of my team. I have the best agent. He reads my books, make sure everything's good. And with an iron hand, it's not like saying, oh, Chris, this is good. It's like, this is possibly the worst chapter I've read in my life. It's like, did you write this actually? It's like, did you actually write this? So anyway, that book came out and it was a giant success. Sold 10,000 copies of Barnes & Noble in 1 week, which is what John Grisham sells. So thank you. And so thank you for asking about Ransom. So there's more Ransom coming.
Awesome. Well, I have a question too, just from when you've been talking about, so you speak French, correct?
Bien sûr, I
And
do. Je
it
parle
sounds,
français.
je ne parle pas français, but it sounds like you have lived
Sounds like
in
you
a,
do. Good.
that's the only thing I can say, but it sounds like you've lived in a couple different countries. So, how has it been balancing author and also working in different countries? Because it sounds like you've had a fascinating life, which I'm sure has affected your books as well. So, how has that been? How has it affected your writing, and how have you balanced writing with that?
Well, I have. Thank you for asking. So my dad is Swiss, Willy Wolfgang Reich. He's from Zurich, and he was in the travel business. So I grew up traveling a lot. We were not wealthy by any means, but the one perk we had was back in the day, he had a travel company. They sent you everywhere. You know, you got free tickets from Swiss Air, Lufthansa, whatever. And being Swiss, we spent, and every summer in Europe. And after a while, when we're old enough, it's like, he had a lovely marriage. So it's like he went to my mom. He said, "Well, dear, don't you think it's a good idea that the boys are away for the next 3 months?" She said, "Why, Willie, I think that's a wonderful idea." So we get sent over. We get sent over to Europe to live and go to these schools and stuff. It's one of those things where you arrive at some of these boarding schools, like June 20th, and you're going to be there till August 20th, and you sit there the first day. It's like, I don't want to be here. Mom, don't leave me. As the car pulls away. But like 10 minutes later, it's like, I love this place, and by the end, you're crying. You don't want to leave it. So that was just all the best. And I think that informs my books. I don't write books in America. I write books overseas. I love being overseas. I'm an American also at the core. I love bringing up my daughters here in America. I want to go live back overseas, back in Switzerland or other places. The world is such a big place, and there's so many neat things in there. I love being overseas, and I always say now it's like I feel more alive when I'm overseas and being uncomfortable. And I have a line that I like in my new Simon Riske book. He's on the street in Bangkok. He goes, "A foreigner on a foreign street, never feeling more at home," and
Oh,
that's
I
me.
like that. I like that.
Yeah. So
There's something very special about traveling and getting to experience different cultures and just different people as well too. But oh, we have a question from Phil. He said, he says, writing about someone who takes down criminal operations around the globe, do you ever worry about getting an unexpected knock at your door late some night?
that's it. Thank you, Phil, for that question. I have through this business, this job, met and fostered relationships with a lot of people in the law enforcement community. Um, it felt like, and it's spent. I mean, I spent 3 weeks inside the FBI Counterterror Center in New York City. I've been at Quantico. I've been at the CIA headquarters. I've been in the Swiss headquarters for their spy agency. The one agency that scares me is the IRS. one of my friends, his name is Stephen Berryman. He was a huge criminal IRS guy. In fact, he was the man that was in charge of the operations that brought down the criminal soccer enterprise, FIFA, the international soccer, where he got like 15 indictments. He was the guy in charge of it. And he was a great soccer player. So he loved soccer and started realizing something isn't quite right in the kingdom of Denmark with soccer, and started looking into it. My God, if the IRS wants to look into you, they can pull any document you can imagine. You're in big trouble. So I swear, I always try to be very honest with my taxes. I don't, I'd love to cheat on travel. It's like, I think my travel expenses were double. It's like, no, I won't do it. Darn it. But Phil, no, they're not coming after me yet, I don't think.
And I think also too that every author who has anything dark, especially for mystery thriller authors, just from the things you search on your computer, you know you're on lists already and you're comfortable with it.
For the third Simon Riske book, it ends up like there's a nuclear bomb involved. And I was like saying, can you build a small nuclear bomb? What materials you need? I just can imagine, like, it was like the lights were going off in the FBI headquarters. Ding, ding, ding,
Yeah.
ding, ding.
And then they're like, oh, wait, no, it's an author. It's normal. Let it go.
I hope they said that. I hope they said it. I see there's a question from Mary. It says, as a newbie, which book do you recommend as a starter? Well, that's a good question. You definitely don't have to read my books in a series. There's no point in that. It just depends what I would say start with my new Simon Riske books, which is I'm gonna have to go on, which I'm gonna have my other good news about this, which I can be more explicit about, is that Simon Riske is going to be a TV show.
Yay, congratulations!
Thank you. And it's with a super A-list team. It's with the production company that does the Jack Ryan on Amazon Prime with John Krasinski, Amy Powell producing, Amy, who was head of Paramount TV for 15 years. And they brought on Mark Evans, who just did the movie Old Guard on Netflix with Charlize Theron. But Mark was president of Paramount Pictures for 15 years. And he did all the Mission Impossible Transformer. And so the Simon Riske is going to be a huge TV show. We have a very famous actor, a great English actor signed up to star. I'm not allowed to say his name, but he has dark hair. He has beautiful blue eyes. He has big muscles. And he's just an incredible actor. I mean, Shakespearean.
I'm guessing.
But he plays an American. It's like any good, movie. It's like always an English actor plays the American.
Right? Like when I was a kid, I mean, when I was younger and everything, I had like no clue. And now as I'm getting older, I'm like, why can British actors do American accents so well and American actors do not do such a great job doing British accents?
I know. Gwyneth Paltrow did great in Shakespeare in Love. I think she had a few flaws, but she was still pretty much fantastic. But American Men is like, don't even go there. It's like, it's not going to work out, It's just not.
It ends up...
And that's a great question. So that's great. So I said, I'm very happy. The TV thing's going really fast. We have a great showrunner, also a guy that's who writes the thing, they say, oh, by the way, thank you for loving my show. May I please be involved? It's like, well, that's okay, Chris. We really don't need you. It's like, that's okay, buddy. But we have a great showrunner who's done a number of TV shows and a huge screenwriter beforehand that's doing it, whose work I respect immensely. So the TV series will be called The Take. First season set in Europe, The Take, after my first book. And it's very much kind of, it takes a thief to catch a thief. That's the feeling, but very gritty, freaking hardcore. It's one of these great shows where it's split in two. It's the current thriller, which is what Simon Riske is solving now, with a detailed examination of his backstory, where he came from, his time in prison. You see how bad he was to how he is now. It's really eye-opening for an actor. It's like, this is the best role ever. I get to be, one hand, the most hardened criminal, and then this classy Cary Grant type, So it's great until you take off his shirt and see his scars up. Yeah, it's great. The good, and that's why the producers love this, because it was such a great arc for the actor and for the audience to experience.
And you kind of alluded a little bit to this. It seems like it's different for every actor and every author and every TV series being made. So
yes.
How much control and or input are you having with the rules and with the Riske or the Taken series?
No control. Basically, they buy the book, and the reason people buy my books, especially now, is the books read like a screenplay, and it's there. Mm-hmm. They don't have to change it. They say, with the rules thing, that happened very quickly after the success of this TV show movies called Extraction with Chris Hemsworth. It's one of the most watched shows, 90 million viewers. Wow. Magnificently made movie, but the most violent 2 hours by far I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it's so violent, it's shocking. And Chris Hemsworth says all 50 words of dialogue magnificently. Basically just boom, boom, boom. He looks without a shirt on. It's like, and it's that all these new movies are directed by these second unit directors like John Wick, Chad Stahelski, his name is.
I was thinking of John Wick when you were saying that, because I was like, I love the John Wick movies, but the dialogue is very sparse. It's very effective where it is, but it's the same thing. It's very sparse.
But you're watching it because you love Keanu Reeves. He's charismatic. He's magnetic. Chris Hemsworth is the same. He's a fantastic looking guy. He has a gravitas in him that carries over. But they're just basically 2 hours of stunts and people just getting shot up. But so that, if you read my Ransom novels, I didn't really realize it when I was writing it, but it's basically one gigantic set piece to the next. It's like one shootout to a train to a plane being shot down. It's like, okay, Netflix should have hired me a long time ago.
You're like, I could have given you this formula way beforehand, and you could have thanked me.
Way before.
So we have another question. Speaking of how quickly, fast-paced and everything, and how your books really do give you kind of like sensational TV/movie feel, are you an outliner? The age-old question: an outliner, not an outliner?
I am. I think if you're a professional writer, you have to be to some extent an outliner, or you're gone. You're dust. Because when you have to write a book in a certain amount of time, you can't afford to, which is what I used to do, what I call go down the wrong road. You don't want to go down the road less traveled. You don't want to take the left turn when you take the right turn. So all of a sudden, written 40 pages and says, "Uh-oh, this doesn't make sense. You better come back." So I definitely try to outline. I really outline, like this new book I'm writing now. I have the first 40 chapters. Boom, boom, boom. I don't know exactly how it's going to end, but believe me, by the time I get to that chapter 40, I got an idea. And so you better outline when you're finished.
Outline, otherwise you won't see the finish line. And I have a question for you about this current book. What was the hardest scene for you to write, and which scene gave you the most joy to get to write?
For the book that's coming out now, The Palace.
For The Palace.
The hardest scene to book, I must say, the hardest part about writing these books is the first 200 pages, where you're setting things up and setting the emotional stakes, okay? When you're defining why people are vulnerable or why they have certain problems in their life, that's the core of any good novel. Because a novel is really it's a journey from what's wrong with you and how to make that part better. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard to figure out what's wrong, what's ailing this person, and to write it kind of, I don't know what's the right word, empathetically, not too corny, but realistic, like real. Like that's where you got to get in. That's where you got to do the character work, where you have to sit there and go, how does he really feel? Because at the end of these books, I can say it takes me 9 months to write the first 250 pages and 9 weeks to write the last. Just like you're fishing, you're putting all the lines out there, and if the lines are set properly, by the end you're just pulling each one in. You know exactly what has to happen. It's like boom, 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 boom. But to put them out there, wow, that's the hard part. That's where you're like scratching your head and like, I can't. It's not working. I don't understand. And you're making mistakes. And you make authors. Elmore Leonard said, this is the best quote. He said, "Easy reading means hard writing." And when you're reading a book, it should all just make sense. It should all flow. Oh, well, yeah, of course that's what happens. Of course that's what happens. Oh, but if you're reading it going, what? No, that's not what should happen. That one's not going to be a bestseller.
Well, that makes me wonder, do you have any fishing traps, for lack of a different, to keep with it? Do you have any stories and lures you have put out there that we haven't gotten to see yet that you'd want to go back to and work on and putting back out there for people?
I have two huge projects that have not gotten made. One is a young adult series, which I loved and my agent loved, called Abigail Larkspur and the Book of Immortals, set in a kind of, what's the right word, mystical boarding school in Switzerland, where kind of people lived forever and famous people are there from the past. And we loved it. And it just didn't quite find a place. A lot of it didn't find a place because who I am as a writer in the young adult universe, it's its own world. Okay.
Yeah.
So John Green, who writes, he's the big writer there. What's the Fault Over Stars, The Fault Among the Stars, right? That's John Green, just gigantic. But his whole life is there. And he's talking to these kids every day. And if you want to have a successful career in young adult, Hunger Games, Stephanie Meyers, John Green, that's you, okay? They don't really want, and I understand this, a 58-year-old white male doing this. It's like, I'm not the author that's going to connect with 15-year-old girls. And this new series is starring a 15-year-old girl. And though people will read it and say, wow, I love it, there's so much more to publishing these days. This is where the business comes in, where they say, Chris, you write these thrillers. This is your slot. You are in this slot, okay? No matter how good of a book you write, we're not going to put you in this other slot. Now, this may not be the greatest book by any means. Okay, I'm sure there's tons of flaws. But this is a lesson you learn. And for any writer that wants to be, when you write that first book, if it's a hit, you got to write every book like that. John Grisham does not write romantic thrillers. He writes a legal thriller every time. And now he has his great, really fun book, Camino Island, which I love, because he has a great sense of humor, which are kind of fun. But, what pays John Grisham's mortgage are serious legal thrillers, like The Firm and A Time to Kill, and his new book coming out, which I got to look at, is a sequel to A Time to Kill. So you got to stay there, And as a writer, we always want to do more. I can do this differently, but you really are not allowed to. So that's one thing. That's one thing that's a big dream deferred kind of.
Well, it sounds like an awesome series to me. I read a lot of YA for the store, and I'm like, well, you got my interest when you said that, so I'm like, oh.
Oh, it's really fun, and my agent and my young adult agent who works with Marcus, what's his name? The guy that does like the biggest book ever. It'll come to me. Anyway, he's Australian. Anyway, she loved this book. And she goes, Chris, this is fantastic. You got it. And I had 3 books set up, but maybe coming up. We'll see.
One day. And it looks like I've got, well, I'm keeping my fingers crossed and my eyes open for it. We've got a question.
Thank you, Constance.
Yeah. We've got a question from Todd. He says, have you thought about collaborating with any other authors? And if so, who would you want to write with?
Robert Ludlum's dead. I can't write with him. Can't write with Hemingway. I can't write with Alexander.
We'll give you a pass.
So.
Where we'll pretend that you can, it's like when you're picking a dinner party friend, even if they're dead for the sake of this. You can pick whoever you would want.
Oh, Victor Hugo, who wrote Les Miserables, would be my first because he does so much research. His stories are so informative and interesting. So I like him. I like Dumas, of course. Count of Monte Cristo, The Three Musketeers. Come on. I'm kind of shameless. I like the same things, I'm not going to say Harper Lee and To Kill a Mockingbird. That's for sure. That's kind of above my pay grade.
I think you should get to write with whoever you want. And I was about to say, especially with the Count of Monte Cristo influences, that would be an amazing mashup. That would be so cool to see.
That would be
One
fun.
day if we can bring people back.
Bring people back. I love Dan Silva. I love all his books. And actually, I'm starting a new series. I'm starting a second character now. Amazingly, as I'm getting older, I'm becoming much more productive. So I'm starting a new series with one of the great characters from the palace. Her name is Dani Pine. She is a 40-year-old former Israeli Mossad agent who is just the toughest broad you've ever met. Great looking, black hair, blue eyes, but just and brilliant. But I mean, they say with great male heroes, every man wants to be like him. Every woman wants to sleep with him. It's the same thing. It's like every woman is going to want to be like her, and every man is going to sleep like her. So I'm starting I'm going back to these very serious books, a really serious global thriller starring Danny Pine. That's my next book after this next Simon Riske book. So really looking forward to that.
Well, sweet. Well, that I was about to say, I was going to ask for a final question. What are you working on right now? And that kind of answers that already. But
No, I
are there
haven't started.
any?
I'm working on Constance between now and October 15th. I'm working on finishing Simon Riske 4 Once a Thief. And it's got to get her done.
Where we can all question, will he remain a good guy, or will the old ways sneak back in a little bit? Well, it is time for us. We are at that time of the evening. I want to say thank you so much to everyone for attending and asking all of the amazing questions. Thank you very much to our author, Christopher, for celebrating these and your amazing books with us. And you're a phenomenal storyteller. I just want to say it's been a pleasure
Well,
getting to talk to you tonight and get
it
to
was
hear
fun.
about all
Thank
of
you for
your
having me.
inspiration.
Great, thank you.
So yeah, of course. So for everyone, don't forget, during quarantine in particular, it is hard to get a personalized book, and you can get a personalized copy of this. So the buy button is going to be there for you if you'd like to get that. Yes, we're doing all of the pointing in
Sign it,
whatever
baby.
direction for
Come
whatever the
on.
buy button is.
Get some
But
signed copies. Get
exactly.
serious.
Thank you so much to
Thank
everyone
you,
for
Constance.
attending. Oh, thank you.
Good
Good
night.
night,
Good
everybody.
night. Bye.